The 33 Candles. This is a true story. Every word I'm about to tell you happened. I have addresses, I have witnesses, I have phone numbers you can call to verify. And if you think I'm lying, I wish I was, because what my family discovered in that house should have stayed buried. My name is Marcus Rivera. I'm 27 years old. I live in El Paso, Texas, and I work as a freelance photographer. I'm not a storyteller. I'm not a writer. I'm just someone who barely survived what happened in my grandparents' house in the winter of 2014. My grandparents kept 33 candles burning in a sealed room for 40 years. When those candles went out, we learned why. And by then it was too late. By the time that week was over, one of my cousins would disappear without a trace. Another would be diagnosed with schizophrenia and medicated for the rest of his life. And I would try to take my own life in a motel bathroom 3 months later. But that came later. It all started with a photography assignment. I was 21 then, a junior at UTEP studying photography with dreams that felt bigger than my bank account. I'd moved out of my parents' house 6 months earlier into a studio apartment that smelled like cigarettes and regret. I didn't have many friends. I spent most of my time alone working on my portfolio, trying to build something that mattered. My family was normal, aggressively, insultingly normal, middle class, stable, boring in the best possible way. My parents had been married 30 years, no scandals, no drama, just Sunday dinners and birthday parties and the occasional argument about money that never escalated past raised voices. My mother was the eldest of 5 children. Her parents, my grandparents, had bought their house in 1975 in the old district of El Paso near the border. The house was already ancient then, built in the 1860s brick and wood that had survived the Mexican Revolution, Prohibition, 2 world wars, and every other catastrophe that touched the Southwest. It was the kind of house that felt like a character itself. Thick walls, high ceilings, wrought iron gates that screeched when you opened them, wooden floors that groaned under your weight no matter how carefully you walked. A central courtyard with a fountain cracked and dry most of the time, and in the middle of that courtyard stood a marble angel. That angel terrified me as a child. 4 feet tall wings spread behind it, hands clasped around a lily stem, and a smile that was supposed to be peaceful but always looked wrong to me, like it was smiling at a joke I didn't understand. At night, when my parents left me there while they went to dinner or a movie, I would lie awake in the guest room and imagine I could hear stone grinding against stone, the angel moving, walking, coming for me. I had nightmares about it for years, always the same dream. The angel would step down from its pedestal and it wouldn't fly. It would walk. Slow mechanical steps. Through the courtyard, through the hallway, up to my bedroom door. And that smile never changed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Saturday, February 15th, 2014, 2:30 in the afternoon. The sun was bright and hot the way it gets in Texas, even in winter, the kind of heat that feels like a hand pressing down on your skull. I drove to my grandparents' house with my camera bag and a thermos of coffee, ready to work on my assignment. The project was simple. Choose a family member, photograph them in their environment, capture something essential about who they are. I'd chosen my grandfather because he had an interesting face, all angles and shadows, and because that house was a gold mine for atmospheric shots. When I pulled up to the house, the iron gate was already open. My grandmother must have been watching for me. She always did, that stood at the window with the curtain pulled back just enough to see the street. I parked my beat-up Honda Civic and grabbed my gear. The smell hit me as soon as I walked through the front door. Every house has a smell, something unique that burrows into your memory. My grandparents' house smelled like old wood candle wax and something I could never quite identify. Something heavy. Later I would realize it was fear, but at the time I just thought it was age. My grandmother appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. She was 74, then small and sturdy, with gray hair pulled back in a bun and eyes that crinkled when she smiled. She hugged me and I caught the scent of Tide detergent and Jean Nate. Marcus mijo, "You hungry?" "I just ate Grandma. Thank you. I made chicken soup." My stomach sank a little. When I was 6 years old, I'd told her the soup was delicious just to be polite. From that day forward, every time I visited, she made chicken soup. I never had the heart to tell her it wasn't actually my favorite. Now it felt like a ritual I couldn't escape, a small lie that had calcified into expectation. "That sounds great," I said, because what else could I say? My grandfather was in the living room, sitting in his leather chair, reading the newspaper, the old-fashioned way paper, crackling as he turned the pages. He looked up when I came in, smiled and folded the paper. "Marcus, you brought your camera." "School project, Grandpa. I need to photograph someone in the family. You interested?" He waved a hand. "I'm not interesting, but photograph whatever you want." I spent the next hour taking shots. My grandfather in his chair, light from the window cutting across his face. My grandmother in the kitchen, steam rising from the pot. The courtyard with its cracked fountain and that damn angel. Through the viewfinder, I tried to make the statue look less menacing, but every angle made it worse. That smile, those empty eyes. I was adjusting my aperture when I heard shouting from the street. My grandfather stood up, moving faster than I'd seen him move in years. Through the window, I could see a crowd gathering near the corner. A young man was on the ground, and 3 or 4 others were kicking him, shouting in Spanish. "Stay inside," my grandmother said sharply, appearing beside me. Her hand gripped my arm. "Don't go out there." "What's happening?" "Robbery attempt. The neighbors caught him." She pulled me back from the window. "Your grandfather will handle it." I watched through the gap in the curtains as my grandfather walked out into the street, hands raised, voice calm but firm. He was always like that, measured, rational. He believed in calling the police, not taking justice into your own hands. The crowd listened to him. By the time the sirens arrived, they'd backed off and the would-be thief was sitting on the curb, blood dripping from his nose. When my grandfather came back inside, he washed his hands in the kitchen sink and said nothing about it. That was his way. Handle the problem. Move on. I decided to focus on interior shots while things calmed down outside. I walked into the courtyard, camera raised, looking for angles. The light was perfect, slanting through the open roof, catching dust motes in the air. I aimed at the fountain, then adjusted to include the angel in the background. Through the viewfinder, I saw something move, a shadow, in the hallway that led to the bedrooms, fast, like someone running. I lowered the camera. The hallway was empty. Just darkness and old wallpaper. "Probably Grandpa," I muttered to myself, walking past a window. But I didn't remember seeing any windows in that hallway. I walked toward it anyway, curious now, looking for the shot I'd glimpsed. The hallway stretched about 40 feet, ending in dim yellow light from a single bulb. There were 3 doors, 2 bedrooms facing each other, one on the right, one on the left. My grandparents had slept in separate rooms for as long as I could remember. No one ever questioned it. That's just how they lived. At the end of the hallway, past both bedroom doors, was a 3rd door. Smaller, always closed. I'd asked about it once when I was a kid. "That's storage," my mother had said, and that was the end of the conversation. The air in the hallway was colder than the rest of the house. Not uncomfortable, but noticeable. I could feel the temperature drop with each step. The smell of candle wax grew stronger, thick enough to taste. Under the storage room door I could see light, not the steady glow of a light bulb. Flickering, dancing, candles. I stood there for a long time staring at that gap under the door. Listening. There was no sound, no movement. Just that light shifting and pulsing like something alive. "It's probably just candles they forgot to blow out," I told myself. "Grandma probably lights them for scent or something." But why would you light candles in a storage room with no windows, a room no one ever entered? I reached for the doorknob. It was cold. So cold it burned, like touching metal in winter. And then I felt it. Two sensations at once, completely contradictory, happening in the same moment. One part of me wanted to open the door, needed to, not curiosity exactly. Something deeper, a pull. Like a voice whispering, "Come in, you're supposed to come in." But at the same time, a physical pressure pushed against my chest. An invisible hand pressing me backward. A warning that didn't come in words, but in pure instinct. Leave, now. I stood frozen between those two forces, hand on the doorknob, heart hammering in my chest. "Marcus!" I jerked back like I'd been electrocuted. My grandmother stood at the other end of the hallway. Her face was pale, not angry, terrified. She rushed toward me, and before I could speak, she grabbed my shoulders. Her fingers dug in so hard I'd find bruises the next day. "Don't you ever," she said, voice shaking, "ever go near that room, do you understand me?" "Grandma, I don't care what you were doing. You do not touch that door. You do not go inside. You don't even look at it. Do you hear me?" I'd never seen her like this. My grandmother was gentle, patient. She'd never raised her voice to me in my entire life. But now her eyes were wild and her hands trembled as they gripped me. "I'm sorry," I stammered. "I didn't know. You need to leave, right now. Go home, Marcus." "What, why?" "Because I'm telling you to. Don't argue with me, just go." She released me and stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself like she was cold. When she looked at me again, something in her expression had changed. The fear was still there, but beneath it was something else. Grief. "I won't tell your grandfather about this," she said quietly. "But you can't come back for a while. I'm sorry, mijo, I really am. But you can't be here right now." I gathered my camera gear in silence. My grandfather was back in his chair reading his paper, oblivious. I said goodbye, and he smiled and waved. My grandmother walked me to the door but didn't hug me, didn't say goodbye. Just watched as I got in my car and drove away. That was the last normal conversation I ever had with her. Over the next few months, I visited my parents' house for Sunday dinners, and my grandmother was always polite, always kind. But she never made chicken soup again. That small ritual, the one I'd secretly resented, vanished. And its absence hurt more than I expected. It was her way of telling me something had broken between us, something that couldn't be fixed. I tried to apologize, tried to explain. But she would just smile sadly and change the subject. She died on December 23rd, 2014. 10 months after I'd stood in that hallway with my hand on the door. Heart attack, sudden, no warning. My grandfather found her in her bedroom, already gone. The wake was held on Christmas Eve. While families across the city celebrated, ours sat in a funeral home surrounded by flowers and the low murmur of prayers. I stood by her casket and felt nothing but guilt. She'd died angry with me. I'd never been forgiven. My cousins were there, all of us scattered around the room, numb with grief and the strangeness of mourning during a holiday. Adrian Cruz was 23, my mother's sister's son. Tall, sharp-featured, with dark eyes that always seemed to be calculating something. He'd come out as gay when he was 14, and while some of the extended family had pulled away, my grandparents had been his fiercest defenders. He owed them everything. Chris Morales was 22, quiet and cautious, always working at his father's corner store, always responsible. He looked exhausted that night, like he'd been the one holding everyone together. Gio Santos was 21, my age, but we'd never been close. He was distant, kept to himself. I barely knew him. And then there was Sophie Rivera, 12 years old, small for her age, with wide, dark eyes that saw too much. She was lying on her older brother's lap, eyes closed as if asleep. I was telling Adrian and Chris about my last visit to the house, trying to explain why I felt so guilty when Sophie's voice cut through the conversation. I saw inside that room. We all turned to look at her. Her eyes were still closed. "Sophie, what are you talking about?" Adrian asked. "The room at the end of the hallway, the one that's always locked. I saw inside it once." Chris frowned. Last year. The door was open just a little bit. I looked." "What did you see?" I asked, my mouth suddenly dry. Sophie's voice was flat, monotone, like she was reciting something she'd memorized. "The walls are covered with religious pictures, everywhere, from the floor to the ceiling. crosses, saints, Buddha, Hindu gods, all mixed together. And in the middle of the room there's a round table, painted blue, ugly blue. And on the table there are candles, lots of candles, burning. No one spoke. "You're making that up?" Chris said finally. "No, she's not," I said. "I saw light under the door, flickering like candles." Adrian leaned forward. "Grandma and Grandpa weren't religious. They didn't even go to church. Why would they have a room full of that stuff?" Sophie opened her eyes. They were unfocused, staring at nothing. "If you don't believe me, go look. The house is empty right now. Grandpa's here. No one's home. Go see for yourselves." The funeral home was only 6 blocks from the house. We looked at each other, the same thought forming in all our minds. "We should go," Adrian said. "This is insane," Chris muttered. "We should stay here." But we were already standing, already moving toward the door. We told our parents we were going to get food, asked my grandfather if he needed anything from the house. He just shook his head slowly, eyes never leaving the casket. The walk felt longer than 6 blocks. The street was too quiet. Every house we passed had lights in the windows, families inside celebrating Christmas Eve, but the closer we got to my grandparents' house, the darker it seemed, like the light couldn't quite reach that far. We stood outside the iron gate. I looked through the bars at the courtyard, at the fountain, at the angel. In the darkness I couldn't see its face clearly, but I could see its mouth, wide open, not smiling, screaming. "Are we really doing this?" Chris asked. Adrian pushed the gate open. It screamed on its hinges. "We're doing this." We stepped inside. The front door was unlocked. My grandfather never locked it during the day, old habit from a different time. The house was dark. I fumbled for the light switch, and when the hallway bulb flickered on the sound it made set my teeth on edge. A buzzing, crackling sound like the wiring was about to give out. We moved through the living room in silence, past the kitchen, past the courtyard where the angel stood with its mouth open in that silent scream, down the hallway, toward the door at the end. The smell of candle wax was overwhelming. My eyes watered, my throat tightened. Adrian reached for the doorknob. "Wait," I said. "What if Grandma was right? What if we're not supposed to go in there?" "Then why did she keep it locked for 40 years?" Adrian said. "What was she so afraid of?" He turned the knob. The door opened. And we saw what my grandparents had been hiding all this time. The room was exactly as Sophie described. Every inch of wall space covered with religious iconography. Catholic crosses next to Hindu deities. The Virgin Mary beside a jade Buddha. The Star of David overlapping with the Eye of Horus. Dream catchers hanging from the ceiling. Symbols I didn't recognize from religions I'd never heard of. And in the center of the room, a round wooden table painted a horrible shade of sky blue, the paint peeling and cracked with age. On that table, arranged in a specific pattern, were 33 candles, all of them burning. The flames didn't flicker. They stood perfectly still, like they were frozen in place. The light they cast was wrong, too yellow, too thick. It didn't illuminate the room so much as fill it with a heavy golden fog. "Jesus Christ," Chris whispered. Adrian stepped closer to the table, studying the arrangement. The candles weren't placed randomly. They formed a shape, geometric, deliberate. A pattern that hurt to look at, like it was pulling my eyes in directions they weren't meant to go. 33, Adrian said. "Why 33? One of the candles was almost finished. Just a stub, the wick drowning in liquid wax, the flame guttering. "We need to leave," I said. My chest felt tight. "We need to leave right now." "Hold on," Adrian said. He pulled out his phone, started taking pictures, and that's when we heard it. The front door. Someone had just walked into the house. Heavy footsteps. Slow. Tired. Grandpa. "Shit," Gio hissed. "He's gonna see us." We scattered like roaches when the light comes on. Adrian and Chris bolted into my grandfather's bedroom. Gio froze, unable to decide, then dove under the table in the candle room, hiding among the legs and shadows. I ran into my grandmother's room and pressed myself against the wall behind the door, trying not to breathe. I heard my grandfather's footsteps in the hallway, getting closer. Stopping right outside, a door opened. Not the one I was hiding behind, one of the others. I waited. My heart was a drum. My hands shook. Then the door to my grandmother's room opened and my grandfather walked in. I dropped to the floor and rolled under the bed, barely making it before his feet appeared in my line of sight. He stood in the center of the room for a moment. Then he knelt. His hand reached under the bed, searching fingers brushing the dusty floor inches from my face. I could see every line in his palm, every age spot, every tremor. He found what he was looking for. A shoebox, old, held together with rubber bands. He pulled it out, stood, and left the room. I lay there under my grandmother's bed, breathing dust and the fading scent of her perfume, and waited until I couldn't hear his footsteps anymore. When I finally crawled out, Adrian was standing in the doorway, pale as death. "He went into the candle room," Adrian whispered. "I saw him." He replaced the candle that was about to go out, took it from that shoebox, lit it, put it back in the exact same spot. Then he left. We stood in silence, trying to process what that meant. "The candles have to stay lit," I said. "That's what this is about. They can't go out." "But why?" Chris asked, emerging from my grandfather's room. "What happens if they do?" None of us had an answer. Gio appeared last, crawling out from under the table, his face gray. "We need to go," he said. "Right now." We left through the front door, moving quickly, trying not to run. As we reached the gate, I looked back at the courtyard. The angel's mouth was closed again, smiling, but I knew what I'd seen. We walked back to the funeral home in silence, and no one mentioned what we'd found. Not to our parents, not to anyone. But that night when I lay in bed trying to sleep, I couldn't stop thinking about those 33 candles, and the one that had almost gone out. 8 months passed. I graduated that May, moved back in with my parents to save money, started taking freelance photography jobs, weddings, mostly corporate headshots, the kind of work that paid bills but didn't feed the soul. I tried not to think about my grandmother, tried not to think about that room. But sometimes late at night, I would wake up from dreams I couldn't remember. Heart racing, the smell of candle wax thick in my nostrils, even though there were no candles burning anywhere near me. Adrian called me on a Friday in August. His voice was shaking. "Marcus, Grandpa's in the hospital." "What happened?" "I don't know. Uncle Manuel found him this morning. He couldn't get out of bed. Said he felt weak. They're running tests now." "I'm on my way." The hospital was St. Joseph's, the old one near downtown. Fluorescent lights and the smell of disinfectant and fear. My family was gathered in the waiting room. My mother, her siblings, all of them looking older than I remembered. Grief ages you. Fear ages you faster. My grandfather was in room 412. They were letting people in one at a time. Uncle Manuel went first, then my mother, then my aunt. Adrian was sitting by himself in the corner, staring at his phone, but not really looking at it. I sat down next to him. "How bad is it?" "They don't know yet. His heart's weak. Blood pressure's all over the place. They're talking about keeping him overnight for observation." We sat in silence for a while. The television in the corner was playing the news with the sound off. "I keep thinking about that night," Adrian said quietly. "Christmas Eve. The candles." "Me too. What if—" He stopped, started again. "What if that's why she died? What if something happened with those candles?" "Don't," I said. "Don't go there. She had a heart attack, that's all." But I didn't believe it, and neither did he. A nurse came out and said Adrian could go in next. He stood up, hesitated, then looked back at me. "Come with me." We walked down the hallway together, past rooms where machines beeped and people suffered in privacy. Room 412 was at the end. The door was half open. My grandfather looked small in the hospital bed. His skin was gray. An IV drip was connected to his arm. His eyes were closed. "Grandpa," Adrian said softly. My grandfather's eyes opened, focused on Adrian, and something changed in his expression. Recognition and fear. Adrian, he whispered. His voice was dry, cracked. You saw. Adrian moved closer. Saw what, Grandpa? The candles. You were under the table. I saw your shoes. I didn't say anything. I should have said something. Adrian's face went pale. He grabbed my grandfather's hand. Grandpa, what are those candles for? Why do they have to stay lit? My grandfather's eyes filled with tears. His grip tightened on Adrian's hand. Not your fault. Not your grandmother's fault. We tried. God knows we tried. But they're so hungry, so angry. Keep them burning. Promise me. Keep them burning. Keep what burning? The 33 candles. 33, my grandfather repeated. One for each. Don't let them go out. Don't let them find you. It wasn't our sin. We inherited it. The house, the curse, everything. He was getting agitated. The heart monitor started beeping faster. Grandpa, calm down. We're here. You're okay. No. His eyes were wild now, darting around the room like he was seeing things we couldn't. I saw it under the table, watching you. It knows. They all know now. You have to go. Right now. Check the candles. Make sure they're burning. Please, Adrian, please. The nurse rushed in, saw the monitor, and told us we needed to leave. We backed out of the room as she adjusted his IV, spoke to him in soothing tones. In the hallway, Adrian turned to me, his face white. We have to go to the house. Adrian, now Marcus, we have to go now. We didn't wait for permission. Didn't tell anyone where we were going. Adrian drove his hands tight on the wheel, running yellow lights, pushing 70 in a 45 zone. What did he mean they're hungry? I asked. I don't know. What did he mean it was watching me? I don't know. We pulled up to the house 20 minutes later. The sun was setting, painting everything orange and gold, but somehow the house seemed darker than its surroundings, like it absorbed light instead of reflecting it. The gate was unlocked. We pushed through. The courtyard was exactly as I remembered it. The fountain, the cracked tiles, the angel. I made myself look at it this time, really look. Its face was serene, peaceful, the smile gentle. But its eyes, those marble eyes, seemed to track us as we walked past. Did you see that? I whispered. Don't, Adrian said. Don't look at it. Just keep moving. The front door was locked this time. Adrian had a key. Uncle Manuel had given him one years ago for emergencies. This qualified. Inside the house was silent, not peaceful, silent the way a held breath is silent. Our phones both died the moment we crossed the threshold. What the hell? Adrian pulled his out. The screen was black. I had 80% battery. Mine was the same, fully charged an hour ago, dead now. Forget it. We don't need them. We just need to check the candles and get out. We moved through the living room. Neither of us turned on the lights. I don't know why. Some instinct told us not to disturb anything more than necessary. The hallway stretched ahead of us longer than I remembered the single bulb at the end, casting weak yellow light that seemed to die before it reached us. The smell of candle wax was overpowering, thick, cloying. It coated my tongue, filled my lungs. At the end of the hallway, light flickered under the door. Adrian reached for the handle. It was ice cold. The door swung open. One candle was out, dead. Just a blackened wick in a pool of hardened wax. The spot where it had been was empty, a dark circle on the blue table. Shit, Adrian breathed. How long has it been out? I don't know. We need to light a new one. Where did Grandpa keep the spares? Under Grandma's bed, the shoebox. I ran to her room, dropped to my knees, reached under the bed. My hand closed around cardboard. I pulled out the shoebox. Inside were dozens of candles, white, unscented, wrapped in tissue paper like they were precious. I grabbed one and ran back. Adrian was standing frozen in the doorway of the candle room, staring down the hallway. Marcus, he said quietly, don't move fast, but look. At the end of the hallway, barely visible in the weak light, something stood, small, child-sized. At first I thought it was a trick of the shadows, then it moved, not walking, not quite. More like swaying, side to side, like a child playing a game. What is that? I whispered. I don't know. The figure took a step forward, then another, moving toward us. I couldn't see its face. There was something wrong with it. A darkness that clung to it, obscuring details, but I could feel its attention. Focused, intent. "Light the candle," Adrian said. His voice was steady, but I could hear the tremor underneath. "Light it now." I fumbled with the matches, struck one. It went out, struck another. Out! The figure was halfway down the hall now, close enough that I could hear it. A soft sound, breathing, but wrong, too wet. Like it was breathing through water. Third match. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely hold it. The flame caught. I touched it to the wick of the new candle. It took forever to catch. 5 seconds that felt like 5 hours. The candle flickered, steadied, burned. I placed it in the empty spot on the table. A sound filled the room, not loud. A sigh, long and deep, coming from everywhere and nowhere. The walls, the floor, the air itself. And in the hallway, the small figure stopped. For a moment, nothing moved. We barely breathed. Then it retreated, backwards, still facing us, sliding into the darkness at the end of the hall until it disappeared completely. The silence that followed was worse than the sound had been. "What the fuck was that?" My voice cracked. Adrian didn't answer. He was counting the candles, his lips moving silently. 33, he said finally. "They're all here, all burning. So we're good, we can leave." I don't know what the rules are." We stood there for another minute, neither of us wanting to move. Then Adrian pulled the door closed and we walked back down the hallway as quickly as we could without running. In the living room, I made the mistake of glancing toward the courtyard. The angel wasn't on its pedestal. "Adrian?" "What?" "The angel. Don't." His voice was sharp. "Don't say it. Don't look. We're leaving. Right now." We got in the car. Neither of our phones turned back on until we were 3 blocks away. Adrian's immediately started ringing. His mother. He put it on speaker. "Adrian, where are you? Your grandfather." Her voice broke. "He's gone, mijo. He's gone." The funeral was smaller than my grandmother's, quieter. Uncle Manuel made all the arrangements, efficient, cold. He'd already been talking to a real estate agent, we found out later. Already planning to sell the house before the body was even in the ground. None of us confronted him about it. What would we say after the burial? Adrian pulled me aside. "I talked to someone who might know what's going on in that house." "Who?" "You remember Mr. Delgado, the handyman Grandpa used to hire?" "Vaguely. His son stopped by the house yesterday. He's 16, helping his dad with work now. He asked if we needed any repairs. Specifically asked about the room at the back of the hall. He knows about it. He was there." "When they found something that started all this, what did they find?" "He wouldn't tell me, but he gave me his number. Said his father might talk to us, if we really want to know." "Do we want to know?" Adrian looked at me. His eyes were hollow. "My grandfather's dying words were about those candles. Grandma died without forgiving you because you got too close to that door. Something in that house is awake now, and I think it's because we went in there, so, yes, I want to know what we're dealing with." "We met Mr. Delgado's son, a kid named Tommy, at a coffee shop in the old district. He was nervous, kept looking over his shoulder like someone might be watching. 'My dad doesn't want me talking to you,' he said. 'But I saw how scared you looked yesterday, and I remembered what happened when I was little, when we were working on the house.'" "What happened?" Adrian asked. Tommy took a breath. "It was 2013, June, I think. There was a leak in one of the water pipes. Underground in the courtyard, my dad brought me and 2 other guys to help dig. We went down about 3 feet when we found something. A box, small, metal, old." He paused, took a sip of his coffee. "At first my dad thought it might be valuable. Sometimes in these old houses people buried stuff during the Revolution, money, jewelry, whatever they didn't want stolen. But when we kept digging we found more boxes, cloth bags, all buried together." "What was in them?" I asked. "My dad made me and the other guys leave, but I snuck back, looked through a crack in the door. I saw them opening the bags, your grandparents and my dad. They were taking things out, placing them on a table. I couldn't see clearly, but I saw your grandmother's face when she opened one of the boxes. What did she look like? She screamed, loud enough that I heard it all the way in the kitchen. Then she ran out, grabbed the phone, started calling people. Your grandfather stayed in there with my dad. I heard him say over and over, "This can't be, this can't be." Tommy's hands were shaking now. Hours went by. My dad sent the other workers home, told me to wait in the kitchen. When it got dark, some men came. I don't know who they were. Friends of your grandfather's, I think. They took everything, all the boxes, all the bags, loaded them in a truck and drove away. And then, my dad came out. He looked like he'd aged 10 years. We got in the car, drove home. He didn't say a word. Halfway there, he pulled over, got out, and he threw up. Then he cried. I'd never seen him cry before. After a few minutes, he got back in and said, "Don't tell your mother what you saw today. Don't tell anyone." Did he ever say what was in the bags? Tommy's voice dropped to barely a whisper. I heard him talking in his sleep that night, nightmares. He kept saying, they were hands, they looked real, and the baby. Then he'd wake up gasping. The coffee shop suddenly felt too cold. Hands, I said, human hands. I don't know, maybe his mind was making sense of something that didn't make sense. But whatever they found in that courtyard, it changed everything. My dad went back to finish the job alone, and he's been sick ever since. Nightmares, anxiety. He can barely work anymore. Adrian leaned forward. Did he ever mention the candles? No, but I know that room at the end of the hall wasn't like that before. My dad did work in every part of that house. He said that room was just storage, old furniture, boxes, normal stuff. After they found what they found, your grandparents cleared it out, covered the walls, brought in that table, and the candles appeared. To do what? I asked. What are the candles for? I don't know, but my dad said one thing before he stopped talking about it completely. He said, they woke something up, and your grandparents spent the rest of their lives trying to keep it asleep. We sat in silence for a long time after Tommy left. Finally, Adrian spoke. I need to know the history of that house. Who lived there before our grandparents? What happened there? How are you going to find that out? I'll ask my mom. She knows the family stories, the ones that don't get told at dinner tables. 3 days later, Adrian called me. His voice was flat, empty. I know what happened in that house. Tell me. Not over the phone. Come to my apartment. When I got there, he had papers spread across his coffee table. Old photographs, newspaper clippings yellowed with age, notes in his handwriting. I talked to my mom and my aunt, and I did some research at the library. Marcus, that house has a history. A bad one. He picked up one of the photographs. A family portrait from the 1920s. This is our great-great-grandfather. He lived in that house during the Revolution. He was into occult stuff. Spiritualism, seances. Things the Catholic Church didn't approve of. There are records of him hosting gatherings trying to contact the dead. That's not that unusual. Lots of people were into that stuff back then. I know, but it gets worse. He pulled out a newspaper clipping from 1918. During the Revolution, a wealthy landowner was fleeing the city. His name was Don Sebastian Flores. He was a monster, tortured his workers, raped the women on his estate. When the revolutionaries came for him, one of his workers, a young man whose brother had been killed by Flores, swore revenge, swore he'd kill Flores and do to his daughter what Flores had done to their women. Jesus. Flores begged our family for help. They refused to hide him, but they agreed to keep his daughter safe. She was 7 years old. They took her in. Then Flores ran. The family had to flee too because it wasn't safe to stay. But when they tried to leave, the girl was gone, vanished. They searched everywhere. They had to leave without her. Adrian's voice was getting quieter. When they came back a year later, they found her body. But Marcus, the doctor, said she'd only been dead 2 months, which meant she'd been alive in that house alone in the dark for 10 months. A 7-year-old child, starving, terrified, dying slowly. I felt sick. There's more, Adrian continued. In the 1930s, one of our relatives, a young woman, went insane. They locked her in that same room for years. She screamed every night, begged to be let out. Eventually, they sent her to an asylum. No one ever saw her again. He spread out more papers, more stories, each one worse than the last. A servant who hung himself in the courtyard. A teenage boy who died of tuberculosis isolated in that back room. A woman who gave birth alone, the baby stillborn, her screams ignored by the family. On and on, decades of suffering, concentrated in one place. 33 candles, Adrian said, 33 deaths. That we know of, and God knows how many we don't. So Grandpa and Grandma found what the remains, the buried bodies. Maybe, or objects that belonged to them, or something else, I don't know. But they found proof, physical proof, and they brought in help. Probably that group of men Tommy saw. Maybe priests, maybe something else. And together they created that room. All those religious symbols, all those candles, one for each death, to keep the souls bound, to keep them from... He stopped. From what, I asked? From doing what angry ghosts do. My hands were shaking. I put them between my knees to keep them still. So when we went into that room, we disturbed it. And when the candle went out, one of them got free for a little while. The child in the hallway. The child who starved to death, alone, in the dark. We sat with that for a long time. We have to keep the candles burning, Adrian said finally. That's what Grandpa wanted. We can't let them go out. For how long forever? I don't know. Adrian, we can't. Uncle Manuel's going to sell the house. What happens when someone else moves in? I don't know. What happens if we don't keep them burning? Adrian looked at me. His eyes were red. Then 33 angry spirits get set free in a house that's been their prison for decades. And whoever's living there when that happens... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that little girl, 7 years old, waiting for her father to come back, waiting for rescue, the days turning into weeks, the weeks into months, the hunger, the dark, the slow realization that no one was coming. And I thought about the woman locked in that room screaming to be let out, and the servant who chose death over whatever hell he was living, all of them trapped in that house, bound by candles we now had to keep lit. At 3 in the morning my phone rang. Adrian. Marcus. I'm at the house. One of the candles is almost out. I need help. I was dressed and in my car in 5 minutes. The house was dark when I pulled up. Adrian's car was parked crooked half on the curb. The front door was open. I ran inside. Adrian was in the candle room frantically checking each flame. 3 of them are almost gone. They're burning faster. Way faster than they should be. I replaced 2 already. I brought more candles from the shoebox, but what? Marcus, there were 50 candles in that box. Now there are only 34. Someone's been using them. Or something's been using them. Maybe Grandpa came back before he went to the hospital. Maybe. Or maybe they're using them up faster. Maybe whatever we disturbed is fighting harder now. I helped him replace the dying candles. We worked in silence, hands steady despite the fear. When we finished, all 33 were burning strong again. We can't keep doing this, I said. We have jobs, lives. We can't just camp out here forever. I know. So what do? Adrian closed his eyes. I don't know, but we have to figure something out, because if those candles go out... A sound cut him off, a long deep sigh, coming from everywhere, and in the hallway we heard it. Footsteps, small ones, getting closer. We made a decision that night. Someone had to stay in the house, someone had to watch the candles. We couldn't let what happened to that little girl to all of them be for nothing, but we also couldn't let them free. Adrian volunteered first. I told him I'd stay too. We couldn't do this alone. Chris showed up the next morning with 2 sleeping bags and a cooler full of food. He'd heard from Adrian. He still didn't believe, not completely, but he came anyway. That's what family does. Uncle Manuel arrived that afternoon with a priest, not just any priest. Father Miguel, an old man with white hair and tired eyes who'd known our grandparents for decades. And with him a younger priest, Father Thomas, who looked at the house the way you'd look at a wild animal you weren't sure was sleeping or just pretending. "Your grandmother came to me," Father Tomas said as we sat in the living room. "A few years ago, she told me about things happening in this house, shadows moving, voices at night. I blessed the house, I prayed with them, but it wasn't enough." "What do you mean it wasn't enough?" I asked. "Whatever's in this house, it's old. It's angry. Holy water and prayers can contain it, can push it back, but they can't make it leave. Your grandmother knew that, so she tried something else." "What did she try?" Father Tomas looked uncomfortable. "She sought help from other traditions, folk practices, things the church doesn't endorse. She felt terrible about it. Came to me in confession, though she wasn't even Catholic. She was desperate, you understand. She'd tried everything else." Father Miguel cleared his throat. "We're going to bless this house again. Properly. Every room. We'll pray over the candles. It may not solve everything, but it should help. Should give you some peace." They spent 2 hours working through the house. Latin prayers in each room. Holy water sprinkled on door frames. Incense that made my eyes water. Uncle Manuel followed them, holding a Bible, his face set in grim determination. When they finished, Father Miguel put his hand on Adrian's shoulder. "I've done what I can, but understand this house has absorbed decades of suffering. That kind of pain doesn't leave easily. Keep those candles burning. Keep praying. And if things get worse—" He paused. "There are other options, more extreme measures." "Like what?" Adrian asked. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that." After the priest left, Uncle Manuel surprised us by saying he'd stay the night. "This is still my father's house," he said. "Whatever's happening here, I want to see it for myself." So the 4 of us settled in as darkness fell. Uncle Manuel took Grandma's old room. Adrian and I took the living room couches. Chris set up in the guest bedroom near the front door. At midnight, the grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 12 times. Each chime echoed through the house, seeming to last longer than it should. In the silence that followed, I heard it. A thump from the candle room. Adrian sat up on his couch, eyes wide. He'd heard it too. We waited, listening, nothing else, just our breathing and the ticking of the clock. At 3 a.m., I was pulled from shallow sleep by Adrian's hand on my shoulder. "Listen," he whispered. At first I heard nothing. Then faintly from the courtyard the sound of something moving, scraping like stone, grinding against stone. "Is that—" "Don't say it," Adrian cut me off. "Don't even think it." But I was thinking it, the angel. Moving, the sound grew louder. Footsteps in the courtyard, heavy, deliberate. Then the crash of a clay pot shattering. Adrian was on his feet, backing away from the window that overlooked the courtyard. "What's in there?" I asked. "I don't know. I'm not looking." The footsteps moved closer to the house, to the door that led from the courtyard into the living room, the door we'd locked. The handle turned. We watched frozen as the old brass knob twisted slowly, testing. When it didn't open, something pushed against the door. Once, twice, the frame creaked but held. Then silence. Adrian grabbed my arm. His grip was painful. "Look," he breathed. In the hallway that led to the bedrooms, illuminated by the single weak bulb, a small shadow stood, child-sized, perfectly still. "Is that the same one we saw before?" I whispered. "I think so." As we watched, it tilted its head. Then it began to move toward us, not walking, gliding. Its feet didn't seem to touch the ground. Adrian moved first, running toward the candle room. I followed. Behind us, I heard Uncle Manuel's door open. "What the hell is going on out here?" "Get back in your room," Adrian shouted. "Lock the door!" We burst into the candle room. One of the candles was out, the smoke still rising from the dead wick. "Damn it!" Adrian hissed. He ran to Grandma's room to get the spare candles. I stood in the doorway watching the hallway. The small figure had stopped at the entrance to the living room. It stood there, swaying slightly. I still couldn't see its face clearly. That strange darkness clung to it, obscuring details. But I could hear it breathing. Wet. Labored, like it was drowning. Adrian returned with a new candle hand, shaking as he struck a match. It took 3 tries before the wick caught. He placed it in the empty spot. The sigh came again. That long, deep exhalation that seemed to come from the house itself. The figure in the hallway retreated, sliding backward into shadow. Uncle Manuel appeared behind us, his face white, a kitchen knife in his hand. "I saw something," he said. His voice shook. "In Grandpa's room. Someone was in there. I heard the door open. I thought it was one of you." "It wasn't us," Adrian said. "I know that now, because when I turned on the light there was no one there. But Marcus, the door was closing. I saw it, moving by itself." Chris emerged from his room, rubbing his eyes. "Did someone scream? I thought I heard." He stopped when he saw our faces. "What happened?" We told him, all of it. The shadow, the footsteps, the extinguished candle. He sat down heavily on the living room couch. "This is real," he said quietly. "This is actually real." "Yeah," Adrian said. "It's real." Uncle Manuel put down the knife. His hands were shaking. "We need help, professional help. There's a woman. She helped your grandmother once before the priests. She does cleansing, spiritual work, things that—" He paused. "Things that exist outside the church." "Like what?" I asked. "I don't know exactly, but she's the daughter of the woman who helped your grandparents set this up in the first place. She learned from her mother. She might be able to do what the priests couldn't." None of us slept the rest of that night. We sat together in the living room, all the lights on, taking turns, checking the candles every 30 minutes. At dawn, Uncle Manuel made phone calls. By noon she arrived. Her name was Rosa Delgado, mid-30s short with dark hair cut in a severe bob. She carried a leather bag and wore a silver cross around her neck, alongside other symbols I didn't recognize. She walked through the house slowly, not speaking, just feeling. Her hand would hover over door frames. She'd pause in corners. In the courtyard, she stood in front of the angel statue for a full minute. "It watches," she said, "but it doesn't move. Not anymore. They bound it decades ago." "They?" Adrian asked. "Your grandparents and my mother. There are 13 points of binding in this house. This statue is one of them. As long as the candles burn, it stays still." She moved to the candle room, studied the arrangement of flames. 33, she murmured. 33 souls, all trapped, all angry. "Can you help them?" I asked. "Can you make them leave?" She looked at me with something like pity. "These aren't ghosts asking for help. These are people who suffered, who died in pain and fear, who've been bound here against their will for years. They don't want peace. They want revenge. They want to make the living feel what they felt. But it wasn't our fault. We didn't do this to them. You're alive, that's enough." She opened her bag and pulled out candles, different from the ones we'd been using. These were dark, almost black, with a smell that made my stomach turn. Not pleasant herbs or incense, something else, something organic and wrong. "These are made from materials that resonate with death," she explained. "Each one burns for about 4 hours. I'm going to try to draw the spirits into these candles instead of the white ones. If it works when these burn out, the spirits should be released, not freed exactly, but no longer bound to this house." "And if it doesn't work?" Uncle Manuel asked. "Then we have a much bigger problem." She began setting up. Her movements were precise, ritualistic. She placed her dark candles around the room in a specific pattern, drew symbols on the floor with white chalk, muttered words in a language I didn't recognize. At midnight, she said, "We'll begin. I'll need one of you to blow out one of the white candles. That will signal to the spirits that we're opening a door. Then I'll light one of my candles. If the spirit accepts the offering, it will transfer. We'll do this for each one." "And if they don't accept," Chris asked, "then they'll be free, unbound, and very, very angry." We waited for midnight. The hours crawled. None of us spoke much. Rosa sat in meditation, preparing herself. Uncle Manuel paced. Adrian checked and rechecked the supplies we'd need. Chris sat in the corner, hugging his knees. I kept thinking about the little girl, 7 years old. Had she died in this house, in that room, or somewhere else in the darkness? At 11:45 we gathered. Rosa positioned herself at the table. Uncle Manuel stood near the door with one of the white candles in his hand. "Remember," Rosa said, "when you blow it out, stay calm. Don't run, don't panic. Give me time to work." Uncle Manuel nodded. His face was pale but determined. At midnight the grandfather clock began to chime. On the 12th chime, Uncle Manuel blew out the candle. Immediately the temperature dropped. Our breath came out in visible clouds. The lights flickered. Not the gentle flicker of candles, but a violent strobing like electrical surges. Rosa struck a match. It went out before it touched her candle's wick. She tried again. Same result. "It's not accepting," she said. Her voice was tight. "It doesn't want to transfer." A sound filled the room, starting low like a moan, then rising to a scream, then changing, becoming something between human and animal, a howl of rage and hunger. Rosa tried a third time to light her candle. The match broke in her hand. "We need to relight the white one," Adrian said. "Now." But Uncle Manuel wasn't there. He'd run from the room. I heard his footsteps, then the front door opening. He was leaving. Adrian lunged for the table, grabbed a white candle, held it to one of the burning flames. In the hallway, the lights went out. All of them, simultaneously. Only the candles in this room still burned, casting wild shadows on the walls. And in the darkness of the hallway, something appeared. Not the small shadow we'd seen before. This was tall, very tall. Its head nearly touched the ceiling. Its back was hunched, its limbs wrong bent at angles that shouldn't be possible. I couldn't see details, just a shape, a silhouette, but I could feel its attention fixed on us, hungry. It took a step into the room. Rosa screamed. Her candle finally caught fire, but instead of calm flame, it erupted in a burst that singed her hand. She dropped it. The candle rolled across the floor, and where its flame touched the chalk symbols, they ignited, black fire racing along the lines she'd drawn. "Get out!" she shouted. "All of you out!" Adrian grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the door, but the tall figure blocked our path. Chris appeared in the doorway behind it, his face frozen in terror. Then he turned and ran. The figure moved toward us, not walking, flowing like smoke given form. Adrian shoved me toward Grandpa's bedroom. We scrambled inside and slammed the door. There was a lock, an old bolt. I threw it. Something hit the door from outside, hard. The frame shook. "The window," Adrian gasped. We ran to it. It was old, painted shut. Adrian grabbed a chair and swung it at the glass. It shattered. He knocked out the remaining shards with the chair leg, then we climbed through. We were in the side yard. I could hear shouting from inside the house, Rosa's voice chanting something, then screaming. We ran to the front. Uncle Manuel was in his car engine running. When he saw us, he rolled down the window. "Get in." "Rosa's still in there," Adrian said. "She told me to go. She said she'd handle it. We can't just leave her." But even as he said it, the front door burst open and Rosa stumbled out. Her shirt was singed. Her face was soot-streaked. She ran to her car, got in, and drove away without a word. The three of us stood on the sidewalk staring at the house. The lights inside were off. The windows were dark. Nothing moved. "What the hell just happened?" Uncle Manuel asked. None of us had an answer. We didn't go back inside that night. Uncle Manuel got a hotel room. Adrian and I stayed with him. Chris went home to his parents, too shaken to be alone. The next morning, Uncle Manuel called a real estate agent. He wanted the house sold immediately. He didn't care about the price. "I'm not dealing with this," he said. "Let it be someone else's problem." "You can't," Adrian said. "You know what's in there. You saw it. If someone moves in, if they don't know about the candles, not my problem." Uncle Manuel's voice was hard. "My father spent 40 years of his life chained to this house. My mother died there. I'm not doing the same." He left the hotel room. We didn't see him again for 3 days. Adrian called Rosa, but she wouldn't answer. He left messages, voicemails, texts, nothing. "She's done," I said. "She's not coming back." "Then what do we do?" "I don't know." That afternoon, I went to the house alone. I had to see if the candles were still burning. The front door was unlocked. Inside, everything looked normal. No damage. No signs of what had happened. I walked to the candle room on shaking legs. All 33 candles were burning. But there were new ones on the table, too. Rosa's black candles. 4 of them, lit. And in the corner of the room, written in ash on the wall, were words I didn't understand. A language I'd never seen. I took a picture with my phone, then left quickly, not waiting to see if anything followed. I showed the picture to Adrian. He showed it to a professor at the university who specialized in indigenous languages. The professor's face went pale when he saw it. "Where did you find this?" he asked. "In a house, an old house. What does it say?" "It's Nahuatl, very old Nahuatl. It says the debt is paid in flesh, the hungry remain." That night I dreamed of the house, dreamed I was walking through it looking for something. The candles were lit, but their light was red, pulsing like heartbeats. In the courtyard, the angel turned its head to look at me. "You should have left us buried," it said, not with its mouth. The words appeared directly in my mind. I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. My phone showed 3 a.m. There was a text from Adrian. 5 more candles almost out. I'm at the house. Come now. I drove through empty streets, running red lights, not caring. When I got there, Adrian was in the candle room, surrounded by dying flames. "I can't keep up," he said. His eyes were wild. "I replaced 3 an hour ago. Now 5 more need changing. They're burning faster and faster." We worked together, replacing candles, watching helplessly as others began to gutter. "This isn't sustainable," I said. "We can't watch them 24/7. We have jobs, lives." "What choice do we have?" "Adrian, what if we let them go out? What if we just accept whatever happens?" He stared at me. "You saw what came out when we blew out 1 candle. Imagine all 33 at once. Maybe they just want to leave. Maybe if we let them go." "They don't want to leave," Adrian said. "They want revenge. They want to hurt someone the way they were hurt, and we're the ones here." He was right. I knew he was right. We spent the next 2 hours replacing candles, counting our supplies. We had maybe enough for another week. Then, as dawn approached, I walked through the house, too tired to be scared anymore. In the living room, I looked out the window toward the courtyard. The angel was facing a different direction than before, not toward the fountain, toward the house, toward us. "Adrian," I called, "how many candles are left in the spare box?" He checked. His face went gray. 15. "There should be 34. We counted yesterday." "I know. Where did the rest go?" We searched the house, found nothing. The candles had simply vanished or been used or destroyed. "We have enough for maybe 3 more days," Adrian said. "Then they start going out, one by one. And we can't stop it." "No, we can't." We sat in silence, watching the candles burn, watching the wax drip, counting down to something we couldn't prevent. At 7 a.m., my phone rang. "Chris." "I'm at the hospital," he said. His voice was strange, flat. "I don't know how I got here. I woke up in my car in the parking lot. Marcus, I can't remember yesterday. Any of it. After we left the house, everything's blank." "What?" "And there's something else. Something wrong with my hands." "What do you mean?" "They're burned, like I touched something hot, but I don't remember doing it." I looked at Adrian. He'd heard enough to understand. "Gio," Adrian said. "Where's Gio? Has anyone heard from him?" We called his number, straight to voicemail, his parents. They hadn't seen him since yesterday morning. He was gone, just gone, and Chris couldn't remember an entire day. Whatever was in that house, it wasn't just bound by candles anymore. It was learning how to reach beyond the walls. That night, I lay on the couch in the living room watching the hallway. Adrian was in Grandpa's room taking the first sleep shift. I'd wake him at 2 a.m. to switch. At midnight, the grandfather clock chimed. And in the silence after the final chime, I heard something new. Not footsteps, not breathing, singing, a child's voice, sweet and clear, singing a lullaby in Spanish. Duermete mi niño, duermete mi sol. I knew that song. My grandmother used to sing it to me when I was little. The voice was coming from the candle room. I got up slowly, moving toward the sound. In the doorway, I stopped. The candles were all burning, but their flames were moving in unison, swaying like grass in wind, though the air was perfectly still. And standing on the far side of the table, barely visible in the candlelight, was a small figure, a little girl, 7 years old, wearing a white dress that hung off her thin frame. She looked up at me. Her eyes were hollow, empty sockets. She smiled. "Will you play with me?" she asked. "I've been alone for so long. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe." She reached out a hand toward me. Her fingers were too long, the nails cracked and yellow. "I'm so hungry," she whispered. "So hungry." One of the candles went out, then another, then 3 more. The little girl's smile widened. "They're waking up," she said. "All of us, and we're so hungry." I ran, not toward Adrian, not toward the door. Some animal instinct made me run toward the kitchen, toward light, toward the smell of something that wasn't death and candle wax. Behind me I heard the little girl laugh, not a child's laugh, something older, colder. "Adrian," I screamed, "Adrian!" He burst out of Grandpa's room, saw my face, and understood immediately. We collided in the hallway. "The candles," I gasped. 5 went out, all at once. She was there. The girl. She was standing right there. "We have to relight them, now." We ran back to the candle room. The little girl was gone, but the 5 dead candles remained, smoke still curling from their wicks. Adrian grabbed the spare candles. His hands shook so badly he dropped the first one. I picked it up, lit it from one of the surviving flames, placed it in position. We worked in frantic silence. 4 candles down. 3, 2, 1. As Adrian placed the final candle, the house shuddered. Not an earthquake, something else. Like the building itself took a breath. All the lights in the house went out, then came back on, then went out again. When they came back on the 3rd time, they stayed, but they were dimmer, yellower, wrong. "How many spares do we have left?" I asked. Adrian checked the box. 8. 8 candles, 33 burning. The math was simple and terrible. "We can't keep doing this," I said. "We need to leave. We need to get out and let whatever happens happen." "And what about whoever buys this house? What about the family that moves in with kids and no idea what's waiting for them? That's not our responsibility." "The hell it isn't. Our family created this. Our grandparents bound these spirits. We have to what, Adrian, die here? Because that's where this is going. You know it is. These things don't want to be contained anymore. They're getting stronger. The candles are burning faster. We're running out of supplies and out of time and out of options." He didn't answer, just stared at the flames. "I'm calling Uncle Manuel," I said. "He needs to know what's happening." Uncle Manuel didn't answer his phone. I left a message, then another. Then I called his house. His wife answered. "Marcus Manuel isn't here. He left 3 days ago. Said he had business to take care of. I haven't heard from him since." 3 days. Right after the incident with Rosa. Right after he saw what was in that house. He'd run, just disappeared, left us to deal with it alone. "If he calls, tell him to contact us immediately. It's an emergency." I hung up and told Adrian. "Bastard," Adrian said quietly. He knew. He knew it would get worse, and he just left. Can you blame him? Yes, I can absolutely blame him. This was his father's house, his responsibility, and he dumped it on us. We spent the rest of that night taking turns sleeping and watching. Every hour we checked the candles. Every hour at least one needed to be replaced. By dawn we had 3 spares left. "That's it," I said. "That's all we have. 3 candles for 33 flames. When these run out, we're done." Adrian's phone rang. He answered, listened, his face going pale. Okay, we'll be right there." He hung up. That was Chris's mom. Chris is in the hospital, psychiatric ward. He tried to hurt himself, cut his arm, said he was letting the hungry ones out. The hospital wouldn't let us see him, family only. But Chris's mother came out to the waiting room, her eyes red from crying. He doesn't remember doing it, she said. He woke up in the bathroom, covered in blood, the razor in his hand. He keeps saying he was trying to help them, the ones who are hungry. He says they talk to him now. Even when he's not at that house, they're in his head. Adrian grabbed my arm. His grip was painful. It's spreading. Whatever's in that house, it's not staying there anymore. It's following us, getting into our heads. We need help, professional help, an exorcist, someone who knows what they're doing. Rosa was supposed to be that someone. Look how that turned out. I remembered Father Tomas, his words about more extreme measures. The priest, Father Tomas, he said there were other options. We found him at the church rectory. When he saw us, his face fell. It didn't work, he said. Not a question, a statement. It got worse, Adrian said. Much worse. We need your help. You said there were extreme measures. Father Thomas invited us inside, made coffee we didn't drink, and listened as we told him everything. The candles burning faster, the spirits manifesting. Chris in the hospital, Gio missing. When we finished, he was quiet for a long time. What you're describing is beyond my abilities, he said finally, beyond the church's standard practices. This isn't a simple haunting. This is multiple souls, traumatized, angry, bound by folk magic we don't fully understand. To properly address it would require a formal exorcism of the entire property, multiple priests, days of preparation, and even then there's no guarantee of success. How long would that take to arrange? Weeks, maybe months? The diocese doesn't approve these things lightly. We don't have weeks. We have 3 candles left, maybe 24 hours. Father Thomas looked at his hands. Then I'm afraid you need to make a choice. You can stay and try to maintain the binding until help arrives, knowing you'll probably fail. Or you can leave. Abandon the house. Let the spirits free and hope they dissipate on their own. And if they don't dissipate, if they stay and hurt someone, then that blood is on your family's hands. But Marcus Adrian, that blood is already on your hands. Your ancestors created this situation. Your grandparents perpetuated it. You can't fix decades of suffering with a few more days of candlelight. He was right. I knew he was right. But the thought of walking away, of letting those things loose, of some family with children moving into that house. There's a third option, Father Tomas said quietly. One I shouldn't suggest. One the church wouldn't sanction. What? Burn it down. Burn the house to the ground. Sometimes when the contamination is too deep, when the suffering has soaked too far into the walls, the only solution is complete destruction. Fire purifies, it releases, it ends things. Adrian and I looked at each other. That's arson. I said, yes, it is. I'm not telling you to do it. I'm telling you it's an option. What you choose to do with that information is up to you. We left the rectory in silence, drove back to the house in silence, sat in the car outside staring at the building that had consumed our lives for months. We can't burn it down, I said finally. We go to jail. Our families would be destroyed. And what if it doesn't work? What if we just make them angrier? Then what do we do? I don't know. We went inside, checked the candles. 2 more were dying. We replaced them with our last spares. 0 candles left. 33 burning. No more reserves. How long do you think we have? Adrian asked. I looked at the flames. Some were tall and strong. Others were already guttering, drowning in their own wax. 6 hours, maybe 8. Then we have 6 hours to decide. We spent those hours in the living room not talking, just sitting, waiting. The house was quiet, too quiet, like it was holding its breath, waiting with us. At 4 p.m., Adrian's phone rang, a number he didn't recognize. He answered. His face went white. When where? A pause. Okay, thank you for calling. He hung up hands, shaking. They found Gio. Where? In a motel, 3 towns over. He's dead, Marcus. Apparent suicide. He'd been there for days. The maid found him this morning. I felt the room spin. No, that's not possible. Gio wouldn't. The police said there was a note, just 1 line. They're too hungry. I'm sorry. We sat with that. The weight of it, our cousin, dead, because of this house. Because of choices made by people, Long-dead choices that had cascaded down through generations until they crushed a 21-year-old kid who'd never hurt anyone. "It's over," I said. "Adrian, it's over. We can't do this anymore. We call the fire department, report a gas leak, get everyone out of the area, and then we burn it." "What about Uncle Manuel? It's his house, legally. Uncle Manuel abandoned us, abandoned this. He doesn't get a say." Adrian closed his eyes. When he opened them, there was something broken in his gaze, something that would never heal. "Okay, we burn it. We didn't have gasoline, didn't have accelerant, but we had candles, 33 of them, and curtains, newspapers, furniture that was 150 years old and dry as bone. We started in the candle room, pulled down the curtains, piled them in the center of the room, added newspapers from Grandpa's collection, magazines, anything that would catch. Then together we each took a candle. Looked at each other. "Are you sure?" Adrian asked. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." We tilted our candles, let the flames touch the pile of fabric and paper. The fire caught immediately, spread faster than I expected. In seconds, the pile was an inferno. We backed out of the room, watching the flames climb the walls, consuming the religious imagery, the symbols, the prayers that had held for 40 years. "We need to go," I said. "Now." We ran for the front door. It wouldn't open. Adrian pulled the handle, pushed, pulled again. The door was solid, immovable, like it had been nailed shut from the outside. "The back door," I said. We ran through the kitchen. The back door was the same, locked, sealed, impossible. "Windows," Adrian said. "Every window we tried was the same. They wouldn't open, wouldn't break." I picked up a chair and swung it at the living room window. The chair shattered. The window didn't even crack. Behind us, smoke was beginning to fill the hallway. The fire was spreading. I could hear it a roar that grew louder every second. "They're not letting us out," Adrian said. His voice was eerily calm. "They're keeping us here. No, there has to be a way." But even as I said it, I knew. The spirits didn't want to be alone anymore. They didn't want to burn alone. After decades of suffering, they were going to make sure we suffered too. The smoke was getting thicker. I could barely see Adrian across the room. "Marcus," he said, I'm sorry I got you into this." "You didn't. We're family. We did this together." I heard him laugh, a broken sound. "Yeah, together." The heat was intense now. The wallpaper in the hallway was curling, blackening. The fire had reached the living room. I thought about my parents, about how they'd hear about this, about what they'd think. Would they understand? Would anyone? Through the smoke, I saw movement. Small figures, child-sized, adult-sized, all around us. Standing in the flames, but not burning, watching. "They're here," Adrian said. "All of them. I see them." One stepped forward. The little girl, her empty eye sockets, stared at me. "You tried to keep us in the dark," she said. "Now you stay in the dark with us." The ceiling groaned, cracked. I grabbed Adrian's arm and pulled him toward Grandpa's bedroom. It was the farthest from the fire. Maybe we had a few more minutes. We crawled on our hands and knees under the smoke, coughing eyes streaming. Made it to the bedroom, slammed the door. There was a window. I tried it again, still wouldn't open. "Help!" Adrian screamed. "Someone help us!" But the walls were thick, the neighbors too far away. No one would hear us until it was too late. I felt for my phone. Called 911. It rang and rang, no answer, like the house was blocking the signal. "This is how it ends," Adrian said. He wasn't panicking. He sounded resigned. "This is how they win." "No," I said. "No, I'm not dying here. I'm not letting them win." I looked around the room desperately. There had to be something, some way out. My eyes fell on the bed, Grandpa's bed, under it, where he'd kept things, where I'd hidden that night when he came home. I dropped to my knees, looked underneath. There was something there. A wooden panel in the floor, with a handle. "Adrian, help me." Together we pushed the bed aside. I pulled on the handle. The panel lifted. Beneath it was darkness, a hole, steps leading down. "A basement," Adrian said. I didn't know there was a basement. Neither did I. The smoke was seeping under the door now. We didn't have time to debate. Down, I said. Now. Adrian went first. I followed. Pulled the panel closed above us. The steps were narrow, steep. We descended into complete darkness, feeling our way along rough stone walls. At the bottom there was a space. Small, cold. I could feel a draft. There's air coming from somewhere, Adrian said. A vent, maybe. We felt along the walls, found it, a metal grate, old, rusted. But behind it I could see light, faint, distant, but light. Help me pull this off, I said. We grabbed the grate and pulled. It didn't move, we pulled harder. Adrian kicked it, again. On the fourth kick it gave way, fell with a clang. Behind it was a tunnel, low, narrow, leading away from the house. A smuggling tunnel, Adrian said. Prohibition era. This house is old enough. We crawled. The tunnel seemed to go on forever. The air was thick with dust and the smell of earth. Behind us we could hear the house groaning, collapsing. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, we saw the tunnel widen, end. We emerged into a basement, a different basement. We climbed a set of stairs, found a door. It opened. We were in someone's garage, an old garage, empty, abandoned. We stumbled out onto an alley, 3 blocks from my grandparents' house. In the distance we could see smoke, black smoke, rising into the evening sky, sirens, fire trucks. Too late. We collapsed against a fence, coughing, covered in soot and ash, alive. We made it, Adrian said. Jesus Christ, we made it. I couldn't speak, just nodded. My throat was raw, my lungs burned. We watched from that alley as the fire department worked, as the flames consumed the house, as our family's history turned to ash. The investigation ruled it accidental. Old wiring, ancient house, no signs of arson. No one suspected us. Uncle Manuel collected the insurance money, sold the land. We never spoke to him again. The weeks after were a blur. Gio's funeral. Chris released from the hospital but changed, medicated, distant. Adrian and I both seeing therapists telling sanitized versions of what happened, leaving out the ghosts, the candles, the things we'd seen. My therapist diagnosed me with PTSD, prescribed medication I didn't take. I told her I was better. I lied. 3 months after the fire, I tried to kill myself. Pills. Not enough pills, it turned out. My roommate found me. I spent a week in the hospital. Another week in psychiatric observation. They asked me why. I couldn't explain. How could I tell them that every night I heard singing a child's voice, always just on the edge of hearing? That I saw shadows in my peripheral vision that vanished when I looked directly at them? That I woke up gasping the smell of candle wax thick in my nostrils even though I'd thrown away every candle I owned? Adrian fared worse. The diagnosis came 6 months after the fire. Bipolar disorder with psychotic features, later revised to schizoaffective disorder. He heard voices, saw things. The medication helped, but it dulled him, made him someone else. His family stopped believing his stories about the house, stopped listening. I was the only one who knew the truth, and I couldn't help him. I could barely help myself. Chris never talked about that night, never mentioned the house. When I tried to bring it up once, he looked at me with empty eyes and said, "I don't know what you're talking about." Maybe he really didn't remember. Maybe his mind had done him the mercy of erasing it. I envied him that. Sophie, now 13, was the only one who would still talk about it. She called me sometimes late at night. "Do you still hear them?" she'd ask. "Sometimes." "Me too. They're still hungry, Marcus. They didn't die in that fire. They're just somewhere else now." I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that the fire had freed them, released them, ended it. But I couldn't lie to her. She'd know. 2 years passed. I moved to a different city, changed my number, tried to start over, got a job at a photography studio, made new friends who didn't know my history. But at night sometimes I'd wake up and feel like someone was standing at the foot of my bed. I'd lie very still, not looking until the feeling passed. One night 3 years after the fire, I couldn't help it. I looked. The little girl was there, standing in the moonlight from my window, her empty eyes fixed on me, that terrible smile. "Did you think burning the house would make us go away?" she asked. "We're not in the house, Marcus. We never were. We're in you now, in Adrian, in Chris, and everyone who touched those candles. You let us in, and we're never leaving." I closed my eyes, opened them. She was gone. But I felt it then, something inside me, something that had been there since that night I first stood in front of that door, something that had been growing, feeding on my fear, my guilt, my memories. I picked up my phone, called Adrian. It was 2 a.m., but he answered on the first ring. "You feel it too," he said. Not a question. "Yeah." "What do we do?" "I don't know, maybe nothing. Maybe we just live with it, like Grandma and Grandpa did." "They lived 40 years with this. Maybe that's all we can do." "I don't know if I can last 40 years," Adrian said quietly. "I don't know if I can last 40 days. "Try," I said. "Please try." He was quiet for a long time, then, "Okay, I'll try." We hung up. I lay back down, stared at the ceiling, and thought about 33 candles, burning, always burning. Not in a room in an old house, but somewhere deeper, somewhere I couldn't reach. The priest had been wrong. Fire doesn't purify, it doesn't end things, it just transforms them, changes their shape, changes where they live. We didn't free those spirits, we just moved them from the house into ourselves, and now we're the ones keeping the candles lit, in our heads, in our dreams, in the dark spaces where memory and nightmare blur together. I haven't heard from Adrian in 6 months. His family says he's in a facility, that he's not doing well, that the medication isn't working anymore. Chris is still alive, still working at his father's store, still pretending nothing happened. Sophie is 16 now. She called last week. "Marcus," she said, "I need to tell you something." "What?" "I counted, that night in the candle room. I counted before everything went wrong." "Counted what?" "The candles. Marcus, there weren't 33 candles burning." My blood ran cold. "How many?" "34. I couldn't speak. Grandpa kept saying 33. Rosa said 33. Everyone said 33. But I counted. I know I counted right. There were 34 candles on that table." "Sophie, what are you saying?" "I'm saying one of those candles wasn't for someone who died in the house. One of them was for someone who was still alive, someone who touched those candles, someone who breathed in that smoke, someone who—" The line went dead. I tried calling back. No answer. Tried again. Nothing. I haven't slept since that call. Because I keep thinking about what she said about that 34th candle. And I keep wondering, was it for me, for Adrian, for Chris, for one of us who survived, or is it still burning somewhere waiting, getting smaller, closer to going out? And when it does, what happens to whoever it represents, I don't know. Maybe I'll never know. Or maybe I'll find out soon. Last night I looked in the mirror and saw something behind me. Just for a second. A small shadow, a child's shape, and I smelled candle wax. The 34th candle is burning down, and I think it's mine. If you're reading this, if you find this account after I'm gone, I want you to understand something. The story doesn't end when the house burns down. The curse doesn't break when the ghosts are freed. Some things don't die, they just change, transform, find new places to live. My grandparents kept 33 candles burning for 40 years to contain something terrible. Now I'm the candle. And I'm almost out.